All right, everybody, we're live. It is 2:01. It's July 16th, and so we are actually live coming to you from Austin, Texas. Thank you, everybody who's joining us today. We're excited about the webinar today. We've got a lot to go over, and we're going to try and cover as much information as we can in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So the agenda is very simple. We're going to be just addressing some issues that are happening globally right now, what's going on in Greece and Europe in general. We're going to shift to the problems we see coming down the road for the US and why it's so important that we tackle those issues today rather than wait until they happen. And then at the end of the webinar, you've got a decision to make. And so that decision is really just what direction are you going to go and what are you going to do about the obvious impact on America and the banking system over here. So without further ado, let me share my screen real quickly with you here, and I'm just going to pull up this article here from Zero Hedge. This article from Zero Hedge was written a couple of days ago on 7/14, and look at this headline: Greeks can't tap cash, gold, or silver in their bank safety deposit boxes. So essentially what has happened over in Europe and in Greece in particular is that the entire banking system has come to a screeching halt. And, think about this, just the psychology of events, all right? The latest, over the last couple of weeks, Greece had to make a decision on whether or not they were going to abide by the new, what they call austerity measures or rules of the game for a bailout. If the IMF or the World Bank were to fund a bailout through the European Union, it all comes back to, in my mind, it always comes back to these optical backstops. If you can't pay your bills, your credit card bill, that's okay. The bank will wipe that debt clean, right? And if the bank gets into trouble, that's okay because the Federal Reserve will come to their rescue and bail them out. What happens if the Federal Reserve fails? Well, we've got the IMF or the World Bank, and so people have this belief system that there's always this optical backstop. The problem that we see is that those optics are broken, okay? There is no money in the bank at the World Bank, in the IMF. It's not there. There's just nothing there. And so there is no backstop to this problem, and that's really where we're at, where we stand right now. And so as it pertains to Greece, what they're doing is clamping down on depositors. If you have money that's deposited in a Greek bank, you no longer have access to it. All right. As of today, you cannot access your cash. You cannot access your safety deposit boxes. You cannot access any of your wealth that is stored in the banks in Greece right now. Why is that? Well, because the Greek banks need that money. They need your money in order to pay the bills. They're borrowing money from the European Central Bank at certain interest rates, and they can't make those interest rate payments. They can't make the next payment. So they're going to use your cash to do that. They're going to take your money, confiscate it, and use that money to pay the bills. How comfortable does that make you feel? What would you say if we all of a sudden told you one day that you couldn't access any of the cash in your banks here in America? What would you do? Now, the reality is that on Monday, they're going to release the hold on depositors and their money in the banking system in Greece. So again, psychologically speaking here, think about this. What will it look like on Monday morning when they open up the Greek banks? What do you think is going to happen? How much money is going to be left in the banking system at the end of the day on Monday? And what is the effect of that on the national economy in Greece and then the European economy in general? Because remember, our global economy is so intertwined now that we're not in a situation where you can literally say, you know, okay, I'm Greece and you're Germany, and I owe you $100 and you owe me $100. Let's just call it $10 and walk away. It's not that simple anymore. It's literally gotten to the point where I owe you $100, you owe France $100, France owes Italy $100, and Italy owes America $1,000. So if I can't pay you, what happens to America? What happens to the person holding the bag at the end of that trail? That's how interlinked we are now globally as an economy. And that poses a lot of problems. You know, let me pull up this article from the Wall Street Journal that was just, it was written on July 7th, so it's been a while, but the biggest risk right now that we see in the US economy is the Federal Reserve raising interest rates prematurely. All right, now think about this in terms of inflation. Inflation is all about supply and demand. The easier it is to access money at 0% interest rates, the more money people will access. So think about corporations and financial institutions that have the ability to borrow money at 0%, to do whatever they want to do with that money and earn a return off of that. What happens when those interest rates tick up 1% or 1.5%? How much money will those corporations be borrowing at that point in time? And what will that do to the interest payments on the outstanding loans that they have? You know, if you think about it in terms of our own economy, and let me just pull up the US debt clock again here for you so that you can see this. We're up to $18.3 trillion in national debt, okay? That's about $56,000, $57,000 in debt for every citizen in the United States. All right, every taxpayer in the United States owes $154,000 right now, today. So the question I have for you is, do you have your $154,000 ready to go to pay that bill? And if not, where is that money going to come from? Okay, as you see these numbers climbing, it should just be staggering to you. You should be, you know, we should be screaming at the top of our lungs, at the top of the mountain, to everybody that we know about this problem and how quickly it can happen here in the United States. You know, back in 2008, I'll never forget this story. Back in 2008, when Greece needed its first bailout, when we first heard about Greece being bailed out by the European Union, they needed something like 300 billion euros to get bailed out back in 2008, okay? And so the World Bank and the European Union and the European Central Bank, you know, the Troika, as we like to call them, they all met and decided they were trying to make a decision on what to do with Greece and with this bailout. And in particular, what kind of rules of the game are we going to place on this new loan, this new debt? And so there were representatives from different central banks, and one of those representatives was from the German, from the country of Germany, and his last name is Juncker. And as he was walking into the meeting, he was stopped by reporters, and the reporters asked him a question. They said, "What will you be discussing in the way of the Greek bailout in your meeting?" And he responded by saying, I'll never forget this, he responded by saying, "We're not going to be talking about Greece in this meeting. This meeting is about something entirely different." And he went ahead and walked into the building. Well, after the meeting was over and everybody was exiting the building, the reporters stopped a couple of other people that were involved in the meeting, and they said, what did you guys talk about? And the response was, well, we talked about Greece and the new bailout that we're going to be providing to them, and what austerity measures we need to impose on that new Greek bailout. And the reporters were literally scratching their heads because they had just asked Juncker the same question, and he said that they weren't going to be talking about it. And so Of course, Juncker comes walking out of the building and these reporters swarm him and they say, why did you lie to us? Why did you tell us that you wouldn't be talking about Greece when that was the topic of the meeting? And he literally responded by saying this, and I'll never forget this quote. He said, well, when it gets this serious, you have to lie. I'll say that again. His response was, when it gets this bad, when it gets this serious, you have to lie. So think about that in terms of what's happening here in America. We have an election year happening next year in 2016. Everybody in the news media and everybody in our government is saying that we are going to maintain the status quo through the election. You know, the biggest risk of the US economy stalling next year is if the Fed raises rates prematurely. So what has the Federal Reserve come out and said? That's right. They said we will not raise rates through 2016. How many of you believe them? Right now, type into the members area, type into the into your chat box here, and let me know what you think. Do you believe them or do you not believe them? Who believes them? I don't believe them at all. Okay, so those are the key problems that we see right now. Is with the global economy. Is that you can't believe governments, you can't believe central bankers. In fact, there was a great article. I was looking for it, I couldn't find it, but there was a great article on Google that was reported yesterday that basically said that it listed about 20 different times throughout history when governments have said one thing and they've said it'll never happen, and then the very next day that exact thing happens. And so their point of the entire article was, don't believe the government, don't believe the central bankers, they have their own agenda. And if you think about it in terms of just the psychology of events, they can't be honest with Americans. They can't tell us what is happening and what's headed down the road. If they did, what would the impact be? What would the economic impact be? How many people would keep their money in banks? How many of you who are on this call right now or this webinar right now are scared to keep your money in the banking system today? So the question then remains, if you don't want to keep your money in the banks, where do you put your money where it's safe, where it's going to be liquid, where it's going to earn an okay to good rate of return, and where you can hopefully access it whenever you want to? You know, in Europe right now, all depositors, if you have money on deposit at a bank, you can only access 60 euros a day. Now, again, they're going to lift that on Monday. On Monday, they're going to give you access to your bank account over in Europe. What do you think is going to happen on Monday? And how is that going to impact the banking system here in the United States? So the question I have for you is, how much longer are you going to continue on the same road, the same path? And how much longer are you going to keep your money in the banking system? All right. Now, if we can't keep our money in the banking system, where do we put it? You know, what do we do with it? Where is a safe place to store your capital or store your cash where you won't lose it, where it has guarantees, where it's guaranteed never to go down, where it has good consistent rates of return, you know, to the tune of 6 to 8%, and you can access that money at any time contractually? Well, what we do is we actually use a little known secret using life insurance. Life insurance contracts are by law completely separate from our banking system and Wall Street. In fact, the laws that govern insurance institutions prohibit insurance companies from investing in the markets. And so your money is completely insulated from that system. And what we teach people to do is, as they earn income or as they exit a real estate project, or as they sell off an asset, where do they put that money? They have an opportunity to pump that money up into a life insurance contract where it's guaranteed and it's safe from any kind of loss, and you can access it whenever you want to. Okay? Now, there are various ways to access your cash, which we'll get into in later segments, but the key ingredient here is finding a safe warehouse to store your cash that is outside of the banking system. And right now, the only place to store your capital, store your cash, is in a properly structured life insurance contract. Okay? That is where the smart money is moving their wealth to right now. You know, it was interesting to me. I saw last week Bitcoin had an anomaly. They had a blip that was it was kind of a strange anomaly. It skyrocketed in price. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bitcoin, but it's a digital currency, and it really isn't backed by anything physical. There's no physical asset that is backing that currency. The way that they've actually worked the system is there's a limited quantity of Bitcoin out there, so they cannot produce any more Bitcoin or print any more of that currency like we can with the US dollar or the euro or the yen or the Chinese yuan or any other currency out there. Okay. Well, Bitcoin shot up in price and it confused a lot of people. We didn't know what was going on. We tracked it back to Greece. Greek citizens right now are buying Bitcoin like crazy. Does that mean that Bitcoin is the next best thing? Not necessarily. All it really means is that Greek citizens don't know what to do with their money. They don't know where to warehouse their capital and store their capital, where it's going to be safe, where it's going to be liquid, where they can access it anytime they want, and where they have a chance of it increasing in value. Okay? Does that mean Bitcoin's great and wonderful? No, it doesn't. But what else are they going to do? They don't know what else to do. At the Strategic Wealth Network, we know what to do. And so our model of diversification is combining life insurance products for storage of capital and also combining real assets for growth and real returns. You know, we believe that nominal increases in stock value are not real returns today. You know, we use Zimbabwe as the example. Zimbabwe's stock market has grown faster and higher than any other stock market on the planet in nominal gains, in nominal increases. There's no other market on the planet that has grown higher and faster than the Zimbabwe stock market. The problem they have over in Zimbabwe today is that it literally cost them 3 trillion Zimbabwean dollars to buy 3 eggs. It costs 3 trillion Zimbabwean dollars to buy 3 eggs. So think about that. Your stock value can triple and you've lost all of your purchasing power, all of your money. And so if you look at our stock market, it's had an astronomical rise in value over the last few years. In fact, CNBC had a party last summer that marked the 5 crash. Okay, 5 years ago, the S&P 500 crashed and hit the bottom. And CNBC had balloons and streamers, and they were all day long talking about how the market had risen over 200% in the last 5 years. 200% increase in the stock market in the last 5 years in the S&P. Now, if you were to ask your friends or your family, how is their portfolio doing? Have they seen a 200% increase in value over the last 5 years? Most likely they haven't. Okay? And so where do you stash your cash? Is it safe to put it in the market? We don't believe so. There's too much volatility in the market right now as it stands. Okay. And so the real problem then becomes, what do we do with our cash, and how do we protect against, volatility in the marketplace, essentially. Okay, let me share my screen one more time with you real quickly. I want to show this to you. Get it enlarged here so you can see it. Okay, so here's the real problem. This is the key concept. This is the big picture concept here that we want you to grasp today for today's little tidbit, this little nugget of information that you're getting. Most financial planners work with averages. They show you average rates of return, okay? And so what you're looking at right now is the average rate of return, which is 14.84% during the best 30 years of the S&P 500. Okay, so we've got year 1 through year 30. The average rate of return was almost 15% during that 30-year time frame. Okay, so think about this. If you're retiring and you've built $1 million nest egg in retirement, and you have 30 years of retirement coming down the road, if your money is growing at 15% a year, or you're getting an average rate of return of 15% a year, you can safely withdraw that money at about 10% a year, or $100,000 a year to live on, and never run out of money. Does that make sense for everybody? In fact, if you look at the bottom line here, your money, your wealth, your nest egg grows from $1 million to $15 million over that 30-year time horizon, just because of the average rates of return, which means you can safely withdraw 100 grand a year to live on to pay the bills, right? But average rates of return are not real rates of return, okay? And that's the key ingredient here. That's the real problem that we see. Now, the best 30 years of the S&P 500 occurred during 1970 to 1999. So are you retiring during those 30 years, during 1970 to 1999? No. Most of us haven't even begun our retirement phase yet. So these numbers that happened during 1970 to 1999 are fluctuating rates of return. These are the actual rates of return during 1970 to 1999. So you can see, for example, in 1973, the S&P dropped almost 15%. The very next year, it dropped 26.5%. Then it went up 37%. Then it went up 23%. So how do these fluctuating rates of return compared to the average rates of return in your portfolio, in your nest egg, in your savings? Okay, that's the key question. And so if you look at this chart, if you look at the actual rates of return, the fluctuating rates of return versus the consistent rates of return, your retirement picture is very different. Let's take the same example. You have $1 million nest egg and you have 30 years of retirement years. If you were to retire and pull out $100,000 a year because your financial planner is telling you that you averaged 15% during the best 30 years, then you can safely withdraw 10% a year or $100,000 a year to live on. Because the fluctuating rates of return, look at what happens to your wealth. You run out of money at year 15. At year 15, you're just flat out of money. If you spend your wealth down at $100,000 a year and you're seeing fluctuating rates of return, you're withdrawing that money out of your account, which drops the value of the account, and with the fluctuations, compounds the problem. Okay? So what is the solution? The solution is getting off of these fluctuating curves, getting off of these fluctuations, completely decoupling your wealth from this current system that we're in. And so the only way to do that in our mind is to use life insurance as a holding tank or a reserve capital account for your cash. Now, next week, we're coming up on 2:30 here, so I want to keep this short. Next week, we're going to get into some more detail on what kind of rates of return would you need to get in order to have the same economic effect of using life insurance as your holding tank. So we're going to compare two different scenarios of using just your consistent planning that your financial planner has you on, your current path of planning for retirement with your future contributions and how much income that could potentially generate for you at retirement versus diversifying your assets and putting some of that money into life insurance products and seeing how much guaranteed income you can get for life. And what we've done is we've just run a real quick scenario here for a fake client, Don and Donna Exer, okay? And look at how much extra net spendable income they get at retirement. Now, this is over 30 years of retirement. What we're able to provide for them just by throwing life insurance into the mix is an additional $1.5 million of net spendable income at retirement. Think about that. Think about the psychology of that, okay? Think about this. You retire, okay, and you go home and you tell your significant other, you say, hey, honey, we got some good news. I'm retiring next week. So that's the good news. The bad news is that I know that we've been making over $100,000 a year in income while I've been working, but in retirement, we're going to have to take a 50% pay cut. Are you okay with that? How are you feeling about that right now? Now, let's move on down the road. What would it look like if you did the same thing and you said, hey, honey, I got some good news. We're retiring next week. And oh, by the way, we're getting a pay increase. So not a pay cut, but a pay increase at retirement. How do we achieve that? How do we get more guaranteed income streams at retirement when we want them the most? You know, I was looking at the analysis or the analytics of this webinar, and I was looking at, you know, I sent out a poll before we started this webinar, and I just said, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing today? I don't know if everybody can see this. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you here on the screen. Okay, this was the poll. What are the biggest challenges you see today? Well, the number one response was preserving what you have now. 67% of all webinar attendees said that they wanted to protect and preserve what they have now. Okay? Making sure that you don't run out of savings, nobody cared about that as much. They just want to preserve and protect what they have today. And then what I find interesting is that 33% of you said that the next biggest challenge you have is getting out of debt. So guess what our next webinar is going to be about next week? It's how do you get out of debt faster to free up the cash flow. You know, think about it. The average household spends anywhere from $300 to $500 a month just on debt service. That's credit cards, car loans, student loans. That's not even including your mortgage. That's $300 to $500 a month that is leaving your personal economy. Remember, we talk about those wealth transfers and your personal economy. We'll go into that and how to plug those holes in our next session next week. But right now, most people want to know, where do you preserve what you have now? Well, the answer's simple. We use life insurance as your holding tank for your cash, because of the nature of life insurance. Life insurance by nature is separated from the banking system and from Wall Street and is prohibited from investing your money in the market. And so there are more guarantees, there's more safety. You're guaranteed never to lose a dime of your money that you put into the life insurance contract, because it's a contract between you and a company. As long as we remain a nation of laws, those contract laws will be kept in force. And so by law, you're guaranteed never to lose your money. By law, you're guaranteed full liquidity and access to your cash in those accounts versus what's happening in Greece right now. Okay? So if you're interested in getting an account set up, you've already got a fact finder sheet that should have been sent to you in an email. And that fact finder sheet is very simple. It's let me pull it up real quick. Fact finder worksheet. Okay, here's what it looks like. This is what you all should have received in your mailbox or in your email. And all it does is it simply gets your basic information, your contact information, how we can get in touch with you and schedule an analysis. It gives us your family information. This is very important information for us to know, because oftentimes there are limits on how much insurance you can purchase yourself, okay, based on your age, your health risks, and a number of different metrics. These actuarials, what they do is they use actuarial science to determine how much human economic value you hold. You know, what is your human economic value? But the reason we need to know everybody in their family, their date of birth, their age, their occupation, how much money they're making if they do have a job, how much bonus money they're making, their total income, is so that we can diversify and perhaps maybe split up a number of different policies on a number of different family members that you own and control yourself, okay? The next section that we go into is loans and debts. 33% of you said that you want to get out of debt. Let us help you do that. We have solutions to those problems. We have solutions on how to get out of debt, how to manage your credit. That's what we're going to be getting into in the next webinar. Some strategies and concepts on how to eliminate debt and free up that $500 a month in cash flow. When you free up that cash flow, what you're essentially doing is managing liabilities into assets. I'll say it again. When you free up the debt, free up that cash flow, you now have the opportunity to start saving that money in a safe, liquid account that has guarantees and guaranteed growth rates. Make sense? So that's the goal here. How do we free up that cash flow? And then also we want to know, do you have any current life insurance that we can look at and analyze, see if we need to restructure it to maximize the cash value? Or do you have any disability or long-term care accounts? Because most of the life insurance contracts that we work with provide free disability and long-term care associated with it. So if you ever get a debilitating illness or have to be put into a nursing home or have a life-threatening illness, you can actually get the death benefit paid to you upfront in full, tax-free, to help supplement the cost of care or long-term care, whichever the case may be. And then I also want to know, where do you have your savings and investments right now? And what types of accounts are they? Are they qualified accounts? Are they 401ks? Are they IRAs? Are they non-qualified accounts? Are they municipal bonds? Are they government bonds? How do you have your wealth positioned? We want to know where everything is positioned, because most of the solutions that we have don't include creating more pain or increasing your capital outlay or your cash outlay. What we typically do is we just restructure and reallocate and reposition your wealth so that we can maximize your personal economy. Remember, this is a depiction of your personal economy. We want to maximize the use of all of the cash flow that's coming into your personal economy and direct it into areas where it's going to be safe, liquid, earning a good rate of return, hopefully tax-free, and then access that money for either investments or if you just want to use that money to spend it down, you can do that as well. You know, the way that we recommend that you do that is you simply collateralize your life insurance account and then use that money in your life insurance account, you know, the borrowed money to pay the bills or even to pay large expenses like taxes. When you do that, what is the net effect? What is the economic effect of borrowing someone else's money and never touching your money? Well, the true economic effect is that your money is never interrupted. Your money continues to grow and compound and earn uninterrupted compound interest. And then when you have new money, new cash flow coming in, and you know, I don't care if that money is coming from Social Security or Medicare or, you know, sorry, not Medicare, but the lottery or cash flow assets that you own. Maybe you own real estate that's cash flowing. It doesn't matter where that money is coming from. Rather than transfer that wealth to the government or transfer that wealth through ordinary living expenses, what we recommend is that you pump that money into your life insurance account where it's captured and controlled and earning compound interest. And then all you do is you simply collateralize that account, borrow out what you need to live on or to pay the bills, and then just simply repeat the process. You know, once you borrow that money, you use borrowed funds to pay the bills or to pay for those large expenses or even to invest in some opportunities that you might have. Okay? And then when all of that new investment capital comes in, when that new investment capital comes in, you just simply direct that money back into your life insurance account, paying down those loans that you have outstanding or that you've collateralized your account with, freeing up that capital so that you can do it all over again. You can just simply borrow it out again and then take that money and use that money to spend, to pay the bills or to pay taxes, you know, or to do other things, pay for college education, pay for you know, any kind of lifestyle expenses that you can think of, cars, vacations, new homes, education, even your ordinary living expenses. All right. That's the benefit to using life insurance accounts to capture and control your money. All right. But rule number one, again, is getting back to basics and saying, where do we stash our cash in the most, you know, in the safest manner? What is the number one place where we can warehouse our capital so that we have full access and control of our money and it won't be lost, where we have greater guarantees, less risk, less volatility, and more access to our cash? Okay, so thanks again for joining us today. We're going to end it there. We've gone a little bit over. It's 2:40 now. This webinar will be replayed, and so the link to the replay will be sent to you shortly. I highly encourage you to send that link out to your friends and family so that they can watch the replay, because next week when we talk about getting out of debt and we show you the secrets of getting out of debt, we're not going to be recording that webinar. So you will have to attend live in order to get the special bonus that we have for you in that webinar right now. Okay, so right now, today, what we're going to do is we're going to show you a bonus that we have right now, and it's a discount on joining the Strategic Wealth Network and getting 50% off of the Pro annual subscription. That's the annual subscription to the Strategic Wealth Network. And for those of you who haven't been introduced to the Strategic Wealth Network yet, let me show you what it looks like right now. It's basically a tribe that we're building of like-minded people that want to preserve and protect their wealth and grow their personal economy for one reason, and that's to give away more money, to live a richer life. You know, we believe strongly that there's a huge difference between getting rich and being rich. Getting rich just is the accumulation phase of wealth building, but being rich is giving back more in a more meaningful way. And if you ask your friends and family, what is the purpose for saving money today? Why are you not spending every dime that you earn today? Why are you saving money for the future? More often than not, they'll give you one of two answers. It's either for income streams at retirement, or it's so that you can give back in a more meaningful way. And so this platform that we've created is very similar to a theme park. You know, you can navigate and go anywhere you want on this platform. You can learn tons of very useful information on your own, and you can try and figure out the ins and outs of how to do this on your own. And you can join this tribe for free if you wanted to. Or you could simply pay the discounted rate, and you could have a guide walk you through, hold your hand, and take you step by step through our process to completely insulate and protect your personal economy from what's going on around the world, and help you to show you ways to grow that personal economy over time so that you will have more resources and more wealth to give back in a more meaningful way. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? So with that in mind, I'm going to end the call today. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you next week. Have a wonderful day.